Welcome, college football fans, to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I am your host, JJ Kitchen. I know, guys, we usually talk about a lot about what's going on with Pitt, but tonight we're lucky enough to have a special guest on. This is someone that I truly trust, really admire in terms of his knowledge, not just in the landscape of the Big 12, but also the SEC and his college football knowledge in general. I've been wanting to get this guy on for a while now because of how great of a guy he is. Been on his show a couple of times, and I know you guys will like it a lot. This is going to be a great discussion tonight. Got a couple topics to go over tonight, and this one is going to light the fires for sure. And, of course, I'll bring him in here. Jason Watkins from the College Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. How you doing, brother?
Good, man. You made me blush a little bit there, all that nice talk about me. I appreciate that a lot. Thanks a lot for having me on the show, man.
Brother, it's good to get you on here. I've been wanting to do this for a while. Just wanting your knowledge in general, man. It's been a great privilege to you actually watch your show, the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. Before we get started here, guys, obviously, please subscribe to the channel, like it, comment, any type of comments that you guys have tonight. This is the type of stuff you want to get on here for, and ask Jason those questions, because then we'll be able to answer it, and we'll get him back on the show for a live stream for you guys. But Jason, talk about just in general where they can find you before we get started, where they can find you on Twitter, your channel, everything. Just go over that real quick.
Yeah, my channel is on YouTube. It's just the @ CFB-pod. That's at CFB-pod. You can find us on our website. It's hofmedia.us. And then, like it says on the ticker there, at BirdieManDub on Twitter. You can always get me going there. So everybody jump over there, check us out. We will have JJ on with us hopefully tomorrow night as well on our live. It's 8:30 Eastern time on at CFB-pod.
Fantastic. And again, guys, I always tell you guys, I bring people on here that are really respectable, but more importantly, they're knowledgeable. And guys like Jason, man, I'm just, again, privileged to have you on here. Because tonight we've got two great topics tonight. One that really crowd the college football world at this point, and kind of one that was really a shocker the first couple days here, and especially one that came out today. But the first one, San Diego State putting in their notice, potentially leaving the Mountain West to try to go to the Pac-12 or the Big 12. And that's kind of the conversation we're going to have here first. Jason, when I looked at this, when it kind of really just brought me to a point where, when I saw that, I kind of expected it. But what was crazy to me is when they asked for an extra month to try to figure out where they can go to. But as I look at it, I don't know if they're going to go to the Pac-12 or the Big 12 because of the questions revolving around the Pac-12 and them not having a media rights deal. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that the Pac-12 has drug its feet so much over this last year. I mean, when you start thinking about towards the end of last season, you had George Kliavkoff talking about having a media deal early in the year, right? He was talking about early in January, maybe February being the latest. Then it's been moved back something like 9 different times that they have changed their little deadline for whatever they're going to do. Never mind the fact that they had the exclusive dealings with Fox and ESPN to be able to get a deal done this past year about this time. They ended up leaving a month-and-a-half long negotiations, I think it was, and had nothing. That's when you had the Big 12 be able to jump in, take a deal of their own. They were actually ahead of time to even have to do it. Brett Yormark, the commissioner of the Big 12, had the foresight to be able to jump ahead. He knew that the landscape of sports in general and really linear television is changing so much, and there's just not that much room left anymore, that he knew he needed to jump in there and get what he could. They essentially now they're looking at the Pac-12 is, had they taken that deal, they would have taken the exact same deal that what the Big 12 had. And now they're going to be lucky. If you're listening to what you're hearing, some people are saying it's an average of $22 million per Pac-12 school, if there is even a deal, by the way, if there is even one. And I'm also hearing that it could be more revenue for Oregon UW than the rest of the league, which puts the rest of them down at about $16 million. And then they have to pay this Comcast deal where they were taking too much payment. There was an overpayment and they were doing it. So there's a lawsuit there. They owe them somewhere in the neighborhood of $75 million. I don't know where it is, but so if San Diego State is coming in, and I'm not positive that this is correct, but I'm getting the idea that they're going to be paying part of this repayment, which is ridiculous to me if they do that. But that's one of the things that would get them into the Pac-12, and they've definitely wanted to be there for a while. It seems to me like it's a better move for them to go to the Big 12 because they are on stable footing, and they've got a forward-thinking commissioner. But I don't know, man. It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild, JJ. And you know, we've talked about it a lot off air, but it's the sheer amount of disinformation that comes off the West Coast is unbelievable, and you know, not to mention smugness, but it's just it's a whole crazy deal, right?
Yeah, let me tell you something. When you know, when I heard this come out, you know, everyone just originally assumed, well, it's the Pac-12 that's definitely going to take San Diego State.
Right.
Immediately, I kind of thought in my mind, I kind of wrapped around a little bit and saying, oh, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, obviously. But then I thought about it. Why would you want, and you mentioned that, especially having to pay back, and that's what I'm hearing as well. If they join the conference, they're helping divide that up and be able to pay that back with a new school coming in. So when you look at that, okay, potentially having to join a conference that one is sinking regardless. Again, for the college football world, I don't want these conferences to end. I really don't. I think the more conferences, the better.
We've both said that a lot. We've both said that a lot, that I think that it's there's a price that we're going to pay for all of this at some point, right? In the way that the game is. I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you look at it, it's like, okay, so, you know, we're on the same side of this to the point where, you know, there should be more conferences, whatever. And I think people get really confused with that because it's hurting rivalries. And me and you have talked about this quite a bit, is that the rivalries are so important. Okay. Obviously, you know, being an Oklahoma guy, I mean, Bedlam. And for instance, like Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. I mean, that is a rivalry that's always fun to watch in the Big 12. Luckily, Oklahoma and Texas are going to the SEC. It keeps that really the most watched. I think it's besides it's like Ohio State and Michigan, and then Texas and Oklahoma are up there. I mean, that's literally your two rivalries that everyone's going to watch.
The
but when you look at this, man,
a couple of them,
you know, the Iron Bowl from Alabama and Auburn. When you look at that, that's the lifeblood of college football. And you know, when you look at the conference in the Pac-12, when you lose USC and UCLA to the Big Ten, which really, let's be honest here, the Big Ten is trying to get off a hand where they get no blame at all for even remotely taking the two top markets in the Pac-12. Okay, we talk about, you know, Tony Altimore won't want to talk about that, but we will. So, of course, you know, that's a question that always gets brought up because it feels like everyone's blaming heat on the Big 12 right now, but really it's the Big 10 and technically the SEC that really started all that stuff.
Sure.
So when you look at it, you know, I think that it's crazy to me that when you look at it, how can you join the Pac-12 right now when you're going through so much flux and that there's really no guarantee that the conference is going to be there? How can you even join that? How can you even justify being in that conference when there's potentially the thing falls apart? So why would you leave the Mountain West?
It's funny. I just said this to Cody from Locked On Oklahoma State earlier. It's almost like Rose from Titanic decided to just go ahead and go into the water with Jack at the end of the movie. You know what I mean? It's really it's similar to that. You know, if you think about it, she just decides to just jump on in the cold ass water with him, and he's already dead. But you know, just go ahead and do it. And that's what it seems like with San Diego State. I don't even know why you would think about it. It just doesn't even make sense at all. And although, I mean, obviously they have always wanted to be a part of the Pac-12. I mean, you know, San Diego State's always been that odd man out when it comes to that conference because their nose is so far up in the air. You know, this we talked about smugness, and that's what it is. They've got their nose so far up in the air that they and their academics, I guess they leave something to be desired. In the end, we're talking about athletics. We're not talking about, and to be honest with you, I don't even know how Arizona State got AAU status. I have no idea. And if you listen to the debate that we were talking about before on the Voice of College Football, when they were talking about, well, you had the kid from Locked On Pac-12 who was an Oregon kid, and he was like, I have no idea how Oregon is an AAU school, right? So it was absolutely just, it didn't make any sense anyway, right? So none of this stuff, and I mean, for Arizona, it's not. I mean, I'm not even bad mouthing any of these schools' academics. I'm just not, because the idea that they're so much smarter coming out of the Pac-12 because of that AAU stuff is just, it's ridiculous. Not every one of those schools is Stanford. Not every one of those schools is Cal. In fact, none of them are even close to it. SC and UCLA, maybe a little bit, kind of. But but I mean, and even Stanford, for that matter, they had a failed bid to the Ivy League before. So I don't want to hear how smart you guys are, because it's just not the truth. And even if it was, let's just say, okay, Utah, they're an AAU school now. So is Colorado. Kansas is one, and they do a lot of research with Big Ten schools, right? Because they're in the Midwest. So they're able to do a lot of that research because it's nearby. That's why they do it. They're not conference affiliated, because you know why? Because it doesn't matter. One thing doesn't have anything to do with the other. And that's what we've talked about. In the end, they've got Utah folks believing so much that they're going to lose their status. They've got patents with Stanford on some of the research they've done. They're not losing anything. And if that's the case, would they not be losing on that stuff if Stanford decides to go to the Big Ten, which is inevitable at some point? You know,
exactly. So that is the number one thing to me that has absolutely been mind blowing to hear from anybody from the Pac-12. Okay, and again, that's why I tell people, you know, I want the conference to stay together, but let's be realistic. You know, how can you even have the argument that if a team joins the Big 12, or for instance, if a team joins the Big 10, so you're going to tell me that there's going to be Southern Cal or UCLA alums over in Maryland or over in New Jersey where Rutgers are, or in the middle of the state right here in Pennsylvania where Penn State is? That's just an argument to where they don't want to deal with certain schools and they feel like they're above everybody else, which has been mind-blowing to me, because this is a conference, the Big 12, that I think has been really just like you mentioned earlier, really forward-thinking. How can we stay competitive? What makes us into the point where we can become one of the top three conferences? How can we be proactive? You've heard a lot of those conversations about UConn possibly coming in. Obviously, UConn just won a national title. Again, basketball, they've had now three different Gonzaga. You know, you look at these different schools, I think they understand that the football can be competitive, but then they're going to bring in these basketball schools to make it a real well-known basketball conference. It's already been up there well enough.
And why they haven't been selling basketball separate for a long time in every conference is beyond me anyway.
It's a question that people have to think about, and they don't want to think about it because it's a fact and it's forward thinking. Okay. Right. But when you look at San Diego State, I mean, look at their basketball program. Would you not want to be a part of the Big 12 when you have to compare the Big 12 right now to the Pac-12? And from everything that I've heard, you know, I thought it was crazy when all of the Pac-12 people came out and said, well, we can just get just as much money as the Big 12. Immediately in my mind, I said, how can you say that? How can you say that when you're literally your top two teams in your conference and the two top markets left? They're going to the Big 10. How can you ask to get more money?
And you haven't even added new schools yet either. That was the other thing, right? Yeah.
So
at least with the Big 12, they added 4 more schools. Now, they should have done that a long time ago. Don't get me wrong. That should have happened long before Yormark ever got there. It may never have came to this point. But yeah, no, you're right. You're 100% right. Because here's the deal. And there's no way and maybe the money was the same. I think they were offering them the same amount of money, because you do have a couple of schools left that do move the needle in football when it comes to Oregon and Washington. You know, they're big brands. Okay. And then when you figure in Coach Prime in Colorado, that's at least temporarily a draw, right?
Yeah.
So they should have taken the 31-7. Now they're looking at best 25. I mean, with 25, and now they're talking about 25 million keeping the pack together. Okay, maybe. And I don't know that that's what I don't really think it's as much. To me, it's not as much about the money at this point, because as I said, the money is already so far behind the SEC and the Big Ten that it really just doesn't matter. You know what I mean? And to me, it just, I mean, what's 25 or 31 or 35 or, 20? Okay. If you're within shouting distance of that number, So be it. But you're never going to be able to sell off your basketball separately. You're never going to get any of those schools to sign a grant of rights. I mean, are you? How could you? If you've got Oregon and Washington ready to go to the Big Ten, they're just waiting on the moment that they get the offer. Why would they sign a grant of rights that's going to cost them $100 million to get out or more? You know, there's just no way they're going to do it. Look at the ACC. You guys are all wishing that y'all hadn't done it.
Oh, yeah, that's a shot in the leg, man. That's been the
I mean, it's and if you don't think that they're looking at that over there, if you're Oregon and Washington or anyone for that matter, and knowing how shaky a ground it's been in the Pac-12 for all this time, you really believe. And they came out of it's so weird the way they come out with these. They're all agreeing that they'll sign the grant of rights. Okay, there's no deal yet. The grant of rights comes with a deal, you knuckleheads. What are you talking about? Yeah, if you're not going to sign the deal, why would you sign the grant of rights? It doesn't make any damn sense. And so all of this stuff, we're having these conversations about things that doesn't matter. And that's the whole thing. It's just like a big smoke signal that's going out there for everybody. And it's also so ugly between everybody too. It's just a bunch of, I saw a bunch of stuff from UCF taking shots at their former quarterback today, Mackenzie Milton. I'm sick of this stuff. And I don't mind, banter back and forth between fan bases because this is what makes college football what it is. Mm-hmm. Rivalries. We talked about. You said it before. That's what you're losing on all this stuff. Utah has screwed themselves out of a Power Five conference. If this does go down the way it appears, there's no other way that it can go down. If they don't get the invite now because of what their fans have done and because of their school has promoted this, what are you doing to yourself? Now, the Holy War would I mean, it's not the Red River game, but it's close. I mean, there's as much hatred between those two schools as there could possibly be between Texas and OU. It's something that would help sell your conference. It makes and apparently they have some kind of rivalry going with Colorado. I didn't know that, but apparently they do. They care about it. They do. So you get to go with two rivals there. Coach Prime is going to turn that thing around. I mean, we've talked about this before. I know there's a lot of Coach Prime haters out there in the world, but the dude has brought in significantly more talent. He's flipped over the entire roster, and he's got real coaches at every position. Guys that have been head coaches, guys that have been coordinators at every step of the way. I mean, you got Mike Zimmer being one of your top analysts in the whole program, and this dude is a longtime defensive coordinator all around the league and a head coach, and he's working for him as an analyst. It's crazy stuff. He wouldn't even go with Sean Payton to Denver. He didn't even. I mean, he was offered that, and he stayed with Coach Prime. So don't tell me that they're not going to be competitive, particularly when he gets to open up his pipeline to Texas again.
That's what makes me really
that's a match made in heaven for the Big 12 right there.
That's what really makes me believe sooner rather than later. And I think, honestly, if it's not towards the end of this month, it's the beginning of July, we're going to see an announcement with Colorado going to the Big 12.
I think you had to. They're saying at the end of the month is like when they're supposed to announce this deal, because if they didn't, then it screws SDSU out of being able to announce, and they got to pay more money to get out. That was the other part we didn't even talk about. I think it's like $35 million they got to pay to get out. They're getting $10 million a year from the Mountain West.
Yeah.
Now they're going to have to accept 16, pay 35 plus 5 more or whatever it is for the buyout on this Comcast problem. And there's another lawsuit out there too. Whoa. What, you're going to pay $40 million to come into the league when the guys that came into the Big 12 didn't pay anything? They got paid. They got their buyouts paid. Unbelievable. And the fact that you would even think about that is beyond me. It's just beyond me, JJ. I don't get it.
It's crazy to think about, and that's kind of funny because obviously, Pitt fans obviously were certainly in the know of Deion Sanders. Personally, I like Deion Sanders. Obviously, recently, Pat Narduzzi and Deion Sanders got into a little bit of a spat back and forth. And here's the thing: I agree with both. I really do, and here's why. One, I think when Pat Narduzzi is an old school guy, when he came into Pitt, obviously he looked at those guys and those kids in the face and said, "Look, you're my guys. I chose you for a reason. If you want to leave, that's your choice. But I choose you guys." But I understand Deion Sanders' point. You know, he's brought in there to win, and it's in a different time period where when Pat took over,
his job is not to make Pat Narduzzi happy. His job is not to make Pat Narduzzi happy. It's to make his employers happy. You're right.
Yeah. And you got to figure too, the transfer portal wasn't a thing back in the day when Pat took over, you know, Pitt, whenever it was 9 years ago. But Pat, people have to realize Deion Sanders is there to win. Okay.
Sure.
He turned over guys. And it's funny, you know, in the Joe Klatt show, I watched that whole thing. It was really cool just to hear about when the first 8 came in. To the fans that are out there, just college football, and that everyone that's criticizing Deion Sanders, here's what people understand. Deion Sanders, in that first episode, we talked about it. I was with Jonathan from, he's a huge Alabama guy. We were actually on a podcast together. And we were talking about that show where he's notoriously, his line, he goes, look, I'm bringing my luggage with me, and it's Louis. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Let me tell you something. After that meeting, he talked about it with Joe Klatt and said, when I went into the positional meetings later on that day when they're with their coaches, a couple of them had music playing in the middle of the meeting. And he walked in there and he said, you know, hey guys, what's going on here? Like what's happening right now? And he's like, oh, we always have a boom box playing with music while we're looking at tape or whatever. And Deion Sanders, the first thing he said is, this is how bad the culture is here. I just told these guys, if you don't do it my way, you're out. And then the fact that they literally didn't care to think about what he said, went to a meeting and did exactly the opposite of what he just said. So at the end of the day, I mean, he's doing what's right. He's changing the culture that's there. That was absolutely horrendous. They were 1-11, 1-11 guys.
His personality is what comes across to people, I think, more than anything else. And it's loud and it's brash because he's Prime. That's what he always has been. Here's the thing about Coach Prime. And yeah, look, I don't have a problem with the guy at all. I agree that it can be cringeworthy sometimes, like the Louis luggage stuff. It was a little you know, I mean, I get it, you know what I mean. I could have done without that
Showtime Prime.
But it also it's not unlike him, you know what I mean. It's not something that I wouldn't have expected it. You know what I mean? You expect these things from him because this is the way he was in the league. This is the way he was when he was at Florida State. This is the way he has always been. It's the way he was at Jackson State. And I'll tell you something, if you watched any of that, of the stuff that they were on Amazon all the time with the whole JSU thing, and he turned that program around like that. And why? It wasn't because of anything other than discipline, and like he was bringing in ballers. You know, he's able to go and get a Travis Hunter. I'm sorry. He's going the number 1 recruit in the country. He's able to go flip him from his own school, you know, his own alma mater, and get him to come and play there. And on top of that, his own sons, I mean, obviously they were big to the program, but there was a lot of guys from a lot of SEC programs all around the country that were at JSU that, you know, this past year or the past couple of years. Now, same thing at Colorado. And because it's at Colorado and it's on a grander stage, then you have people freaking losing their minds about it, you know, and you've got these, well, there's a lot of those rich folks there in Colorado that, you know, their kids are on the team because, you know, they're rich and they're alums or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of that goes on in the Pac, by the way.
Yeah.
Just getting into some of those schools. But that being said, they didn't like it. But what do you want? Do you want to win or do you not want to win? I mean, you can't hire a guy to do a job and then tell him that he's not doing it right the second he gets there. When you just went 1-11, you know, it's what are you doing?
Go ask Cordell Stewart what he thought when he first came in. He said, look, it's either you're on board or overboard. And he goes, some of these guys had to get overboard. So I think Deion did the right thing. When you have all the alums on board, you're doing the right thing, man. I mean, it's at the end of the day, that's the truth.
Look, the bottom line is, and there was all this, you know, I heard a lot of this stuff when we're talking about the realignment stuff, where you had people that were talking about, oh no, well, there's a lot more alums in California. Well, that may be, and that was a relative term by a lot. The percentage of Texans that were Colorado alums versus Californians, I think it was 23% in California. It was like 21.6 in Texas. Okay. So we're a couple percentage points off. So, but there is more. How many of them are getting to go actually watch these games in San Francisco? Because if you look at the stadiums from week to week, At Cal and at Stanford, nobody's there. Even at USC, with Lincoln Riley there and they're winning, they go 11-1 in the regular season, or 11-2, 11-1 in the regular season, and nobody was showing up at the Coliseum either.
Dude,
nobody was showing up at the Coliseum. They couldn't get it halfway full. So I don't care whether or not you had more alums there. It's what are those alums doing? Are they interacting with you when you get there? No. Here's the bottom line is this. Since they left the Big 12, where they had a foot in Texas, they had a lot of kids that, hey, I'll go to Colorado because my parents can still come see me play when I'm at Oklahoma, when I'm at Texas, when I'm at, now it would be TCU and Baylor and Tech and all these other places. You can get around Texas and go watch these guys, right? Now Houston's in the mix there. There's the option. There's the ability to do it. TCU being in Fort Worth, I still feel like SMU would, if they're going to move to another conference, I could see them in the Big 12, although I don't suspect they're going to allow them. But in any event, bottom line is that they've had what, one or two winning seasons in 11 since they went to the Pac, and they're going to win this year because they are. People that are saying that they're going to win 3 games are out of their mind. They're out of their mind. They'll never give you a reason why that's going to happen, other than it's just there's no way you can turn around 1-11 that quick. Well, nobody thought that Lincoln was going to turn around 4-8 from a year ago either.
Yeah,
at USC, and he did. They went 11-1. They went 7 extra wins. And the truth is, the Pac-12, you can say what you want. They're either decent or they're not good at all in that conference. So it's, that's why you had a few 9-win teams. And another reason was, look, Lincoln and them didn't have to play Oregon or Washington. So, the chances are that helped both sides, because there's another loss that wasn't going to happen there. They were playing Arizona State or Arizona instead, or Colorado. You know what I mean? It was so it worked out pretty well where you ended up having 4 teams with 9 wins or more. Okay, good for you. But in the end, it's not that great of a conference, and nobody's watching it. So to me, it's a no-brainer for Colorado to make the move. Even the people that are, journalists from Colorado that they've talked about it in the past few years, even before all this stuff really got started, was that all this stuff that Larry Scott promised us has not come to fruition. As a matter of fact, we're losing money here. And that's what it really boils down to when it comes, they thought they were supposed to make so much more money for making that jump to the Pac. Plus they wouldn't have to deal with the whole Texas thing. I don't blame them for the Texas part. I don't. But what I'll tell you is that has not come to fruition, what they've said. In the end, it's a no-brainer for Colorado to do this. It's a no-brainer for Utah to have shut up and taken you can say the exact same things the rest of the conference was saying is, hey, we're on board with the Pac until it ain't here. That's all they had to say. Instead, they have lobbed missiles and grenades at the Big 12, called it the truck stock conference and the flyover states, and talked about how dumb everybody is out there, and like that has anything to do with football or basketball or anything else. And you have now, it's very clear that there are people within the Big 12 offices and Brett Yormark himself that are very aware of what the rest of the Big 12 wants and doesn't want, and they do not want Utah in the league anymore. They don't. No matter how much it may help to have a very good program in there, they don't want it. They don't. And I don't blame them. You can't blame them, man.
I don't. I think that when I can tell you this, the Pac-12, some of those teams, just how they've been acting, and just totally, I understand wanting to stay in the Pac-12,
sure,
but to the point where you just take a load off and just put it on the Big 12 is mind blowing to me.
Yeah,
I don't understand
the ones
that
screwed you, man.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, you should be mad at USC and UCLA. Absolutely. Now, I understand the Big 10 basically saved UCLA athletics. I mean, UCLA was $110 million in debt. The Big 10 pretty much saved UCLA. But let's be honest. Look at your own conference. Look at the 2 teams that put you in this predicament to begin with. Sure. Okay. and you see the shortfalls right now. I understand that you wanted to stay together and whatnot. Obviously, they're going to have to try to do something with the ACC, maybe to potentially do something, because the contract's not going to be good.
Though? How is that going to work?
And they've tried different things. I just don't know how that's going to work either. But to save this conference, I just don't know how you're going to do it, because the money is going to be such a shortfall. And the numbers that are being thrown out there are not good. They're not good. Right. And if money's really not that big of a deal, I understand that it's never going to touch the Big Ten or the SEC. But to be somewhat in the region of the Big 12 and the ACC. Because the ACC climbs, it's all backloaded. So the ACC is going to climb over time to where
it can't be if it's all linear and there's no more room on linear, or if it's not linear and there's no more room on linear television. And something that Yormark talked about at the Super Bowl was how he knew that WWE was about to do something different. And so was, what was he talking about? UFC. And what happened? They ended up merging together, and that stuff was about to come up. The WNBA is doing some different stuff now with some more regional networks now, but the NBA stuff is coming up. That just happened.
Up,
right? So, I mean, there's a lot of things that are happening now that there's just not room on these linear television stations anymore. And when it comes to ESPN, they have so much of a large portion of football as it is. I can see why they didn't want any more. They want one game. So what are you going to do? How are you going to keep everybody happy that way? You know what I mean? If you've got Coach Prime, who's, you want to showcase him. And I think that you can, he would be the type of person. I believe that streaming is plenty valuable. I think that it's still a few years out from being
it's not there yet,
right where it needs to be. But I do think that he's the kind of guy that could help you get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
He is. Because he's done it already. Now, but that being said, this is not why Colorado hired him and gave him $5 million a year as the first-time head coach in Division I. There's no way. They want him on television because they know that they're going to boost their bottom line. Period. Bottom line. And they want to win.
You're telling me you don't want to see the Pac-12 on you don't want to see the Pac-12 on on television? Oh,
I watch MASH reruns there. I watch MASH reruns there. Yeah, I watch MASH reruns there, bro. I don't watch that. Yeah, I don't know. And again, I'm one of the guys that, the streaming stuff is fine with me. I stream everything. I don't even have cable anymore. I have internet and I stream everything. But not everybody's like that. And so, and I can see that, that may work for Pac fans, right? But that's not what moves the needle. It's the casual fan. And already they have a bad deal in a way about they're always playing that 7:30. Jim Williams talked about it on my show. Nobody in the Pac has ever wanted that 7:30 freaking start time game, right? Nobody. Yeah. And so that's a concern. So it's man, I don't know. It's troublesome. And in the end, I don't want to, and I'm with you on that. When you said earlier, nobody wanted to see all this happen, but here's where we are now. And the Pac-12 has done a really good job of turning itself into the heel to where now nobody cares that you're going away, right? I think there was a lot of people that were sympathetic to it. And I've said before, and I've said it a bunch of times, I think that we lose something here with the way things are going, where they're headed, this regionality. I love it that the SEC is saying, hey, we're trying to stay within our regional footprint. We don't want to go to the West Coast.
Yeah.
Right?
I like that a lot by Greg Sankey doing that, man.
I think it's the smartest thing that you can do, because I think that now, do I understand why Yormark is doing it? Yes, because you have to grab whatever you can, right?
Yeah, he has to.
You have to. But with Sankey, they can keep it right there in the South. And, and I mean, with Oklahoma, I mean, we're talking, it's 2 hours from their furthest west place now. You know what I mean? So it's not a big difference between the footprint of where they were anyway. Now, if they were to add Okie Light down the line somewhere, which they probably will, I would also say I could see West Virginia probably being, they kind of fit into that South feel.
That's a stretch, man. I don't
Is
know.
it kind of a stretch? I don't know. But Virginia, I could see them possibly being one. Clemson's definitely that's a SEC school waiting to happen.
Yeah, I see like Clemson because in terms of that,
Now that'll piss South Carolina off, but I mean,
that'll piss them off. But you know what though, they don't
Yeah.
do much of it. They don't do much of anything in the SEC anyways. But
right.
the whole point is though, I think that it's in that realm. Okay,
Right.
It's about matchups, TV viewership, stuff like that. I think as far as they'll go up is probably Clemson. I think it's where they'll go. And in a heart of hearts, it'd be really cool if they did something like with the West Virginia, northern schools like that. But I think to the point where, unless there was something that was pushing them, that where the Big Ten totally put them in a bind,
where they had to,
if they had to, I just think Greg Sankey, who in my opinion is the best college football commissioner in the Power Five, hands down.
Mm-hmm.
I think he understands, and but then again, that's why they're so good. He understands what they are. He's never reaching for things. He saw an opportunity. Texas and Oklahoma contacted him, presented an opportunity, said, "Hey, look, we want to join the SEC. Is this something you guys would consider?" He went back to the teams. They considered it. It's a hell yes of an answer.
Oh yeah, there wasn't. I don't think there was other than A&M. Nobody said no.
Yeah, A&M was the only one because of Texas. And guess what? They all overrode that stuff. So you look at it, it makes sense. So I just think that he is really good unless something became to the terms. And here's actually what I'll say about this. If the Big Ten, because the SEC is not going to add Florida State. They're not going to do it because Florida, they're not going to allow that. And I think there's some other regional teams that really don't want that to happen. I think the Big Ten will take Florida State if that time really does come. When that happens,
I think they could.
Then we have a conversation about let's start going regional like the National Football League. That's when I think you start having that conversation where you start adding some of those northern teams. If you go up into if you try to grab a Virginia or you try to grab a West Virginia, Virginia Tech, Pitt, when you start looking at those teams,
somebody
like
that's more within your now culture kind of comes into play a little bit there. Yeah. Where I've always kind of seen where I could see North Carolina being a Big Ten school, but I could also see them being an SEC.
I'll tell you what, they're a massive brand. They are a massive
brand. Massive.
And absolutely. That's why people don't realize just in terms of just not just football, but the basketball terms too.
Yeah.
So when you look at them.
Michael Jordan went to school there, bro.
Dude, we had a huge argument. I shouldn't say argument, but it was a real discussion between a bunch of people. And I said, look, and I said, guys, in the ACC, and people didn't want to believe me when I said this, but I said Clemson's had a lot of success. But when you look at the biggest brand, I said it's probably North Carolina in the ACC. Let's be honest. It's that brand.
Or Florida State.
Yeah.
Depending on what we're talking about. Now with football, it's only it's been Florida State up until this point, right? Until the last 10, 11 years when Dabo got to Clemson, because I don't remember Clemson ever being that good. You know what I mean?
Pete Thamel talked about that. And he goes, look, before Dabo, he goes, before this, obviously this first 2 years were rough, but when you look at it, Clemson didn't do anything before that. What did Clemson?
He was on his way out if they didn't win that third year.
Yeah. So what was Clemson? If anything, Dabo really saved them. So I kind of look at it as the top brand. The top two would probably be UNC and Florida State. I think those are the two most attractive ones when you look at the teams. But we'll see where it goes.
I think Miami brings some attraction for the Big Ten in view of the fact that it is an academic school, believe it or not. And
they just got their AAU status finally, which
they did, in which they put. But again, the AAU stuff is a club, man, and that's the whole thing. Is that Notre Dame never wanted it. That's why all of a sudden I'm thinking that Notre Dame is now going to be. I used to think that this past year I've heard enough from different Notre Dame folks saying that we would choose the SEC over the Big Ten because of the stuff that's happened between Michigan and them. They got left out of it a long time ago. There's a lot of anti-Catholic sentiment when it comes to that kind of stuff with Notre Dame and Michigan, and even I think mostly between Notre Dame and Michigan, which Michigan ran it. Ohio State now is is important to it, but I don't know where they're at as far as that, and I don't care. But I know that there's a real dislike between Michigan and Notre Dame. That's something that if you watch the guys on 365, they have a guy from. I want to say he may be from 247 for the Irish though. And he's an Irish guy. And he was saying that he was like, screw them, screw the Big Ten. I would say that we would rather, as a school, they would rather, first off, they don't want to go anywhere. They want to stay independent, but the writing's on the wall. If you're going to compete for the national title, you're going to have to join a conference. I didn't think that it was going to be the Big Ten for a while, but the signal with the AAU thing was that it is, because they never cared about being in the AAU. Coach was talking about that. You know, he was like, it's never even been, they've turned it down a bunch of times. I didn't realize Texas was AAU because they don't give a crap. They don't share research money with anyone. Texas doesn't share money. They just don't do that ever. So, you know, and they have their own, their Texas medical system, when it comes to that kind of stuff, and of course Baylor's involved in that. You've got their state schools that are involved in that have medical schools. Yeah. And they don't need the AAU. They're in it for whatever reason, and I guess AAU probably gives them some extra cash or whatever. But the Texas medical system itself doesn't need the AAU, and neither does anybody else. It's in the end, it's an alliance, just like a athletic conference. You have an alliance with them, with some people that you do the same kind of research in. Mm-hmm. Fine. You got a lot of land grant schools in the Big 12, so you're not going to have a ton of medical research. Oklahoma could be an AAU school if they wanted to. They have a great medical school. They do. Yeah. They don't need it. They've never considered it. Iowa State, they were up for it. They turned it down. Nebraska's let it go, you know, and they're in the Big Ten, so they've let it go. And, you know, it's just one of those things where it's been so overplayed as something that matters when it isn't. But I guess it is for getting into the Big Ten. They want that as to be a part of it. That's fine. But in the end, when it comes to once you're there, it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? And bottom line is it's not going to take you out of it if you were to, because Utah can say what they want to say. And I've heard like the Larry Pilgrim guy saying that, well, what if we went to 4 straight playoffs? Don't you think that they would take us in the Big Ten then? No, they wouldn't. And it doesn't matter that you're AAU. No, they wouldn't. And look, buddy, it's not because up until now, I didn't care about Utah one way or the other. In fact, I've had nothing but respect for him. I think Coach Witt is one of the best coaches in the country, period.
Yeah. Period. He did a hell of a job at development. Yeah.
Before that, Coach Majerus was one of the best coaches in the country, period. No doubt about it when it came to basketball. The guy went to the Final Four from the WAC in the Mountain West. He was great, right? Yeah. So I had nothing but respect for these guys. You know what this program has done as a G5 school, right? And still, but they have literally, even with guys like me, I don't have to care. Oklahoma's going to the SEC. I don't have to care. And I'm one of the people that I'm like, I could give a crap about Utah now. You know?
Because how their fans are, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But and that's all coming from their leadership, you know? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, just to nip this, because obviously I'll tell you what, we had a hell of a discussion here. Guys, I know they're going to love this. But to just nip this this topic, in your opinion, give it real quick. Do you think San Diego State goes to the Pac-12 or the Big 12?
I mean, just by virtue of I don't think the Pac-12 stays together, I think that they have to go to the Big 12. I think, and when you start looking at the money, I don't know why you wouldn't go to the Big 12 anyway, but I think it has to be the Big 12. I do.
And I agree with you. And I think that's what's going to end up happening because, one, they didn't get the extension. Pete Thamel talked about that today. Right. I don't think they get it, and York Mark's going to come in and grab them. I think it's going to happen here relatively soon.
I do too.
But on to our next topic, one that has been talked about. Obviously, people might not be able to think about what would actually be out there because Georgia has really run the conference here in the past 2 years. But let's talk about it. SEC contenders for this season. Obviously, everyone knows the two that really battle back and forth. But there are some teams I don't think people want to talk about in terms of who can really battle for it this year. I think Georgia sets himself alone in the conference, but there's really, in my opinion, 2 or 3 more teams that could really compete for this conference title.
Sure.
Jason, give me your thoughts. Who do you think, if you had to name even 3, possibly 4 teams that could contend for the SEC this year?
Aside from Georgia?
Yeah.
Because I think that obviously Georgia's going to be there. Kirby's got that thing humming. They do have to come up with a new quarterback. And I think they, talking to Coach I last week on my show, and which, great guest, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Great man. Love him.
Yeah, love him. He was a lot of fun. And he went back and forth with some of the folks in the audience. And I mean, it was fun. We had a good time. But I do feel like, and he's talking good about their quarterback coming in. He's a big time player. He didn't really show it to the point that he could get past, Stetson Bennett.
Stetson Bennett,
But
yeah.
I think Stetson's a gamer.
Was
That
he
being
26,
said,
27 years old too? That probably helped out.
Oh yeah, it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt. Yeah. He's a grown ass man. So I get it. Now, look, they're loaded everywhere though, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he has it humming, and you know how this is. Once they kind of get that that move forward, because it took a long time. Georgia was on the verge and never really getting it done. And remember, you always used to hear about Nick Saban. They were always worried about Georgia if they ever got the right guy. If they ever got the right guy, that's a troublesome place, right?
It's a sleeping giant.
Absolutely.
The Atlanta market.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, and it's just. And you look at them now; these guys are just that good. I mean, they lost Bear; they didn't care. They got 4 more guys just like him. You know what I mean? Coming in, they got 4 more on the roster. They don't care about that. So offensively, I think that and their schedule works out for them really well this year. They play nobody really.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to play Oklahoma.
Too.
They were going to play Oklahoma in the preseason in the non-con, but because of the the conference realignment stuff, Sankey pulled that game. So they're playing it made it even easier for them. And then, the SEC East has been notoriously weaker side of the league. Now, there's a couple of teams in there that can mess with them a bit. I think that Florida's a year or two away from really helping. And although they're recruiting very good right now, but I still think they're a few years away from really being contenders in that side. And it won't be a division after this.
Yeah,
but then South Carolina is. I mean, if I'm going to preface this with if Spencer Rattler doesn't do Red River Spencer Rattler, he could be okay, and they could beat a team like Tennessee and like they did Clemson last year, right? Yep. But if he's Red River Spencer Rattler, he falls apart. So but again, that's kind of a rivalry there too. Those are trip up games. The Tennessee game will be the big one. You got to wait and see. Is Milton going to be good? Is he not? Are they going to have to go with their freshman guy at some point or not? I believe in Josh Heupel offensively. Defensively, I still don't know that they're there, and I don't know that Josh is going to be a whole lot better than Lincoln when it comes to that, because a lot of these offensive guys that run that Leach system, which that's Josh Heupel. They've yet to show us they can put a defense on the field that can win a championship, which is what happened to them against South Carolina after winning the game against Alabama, So
it was kind of funny. Yeah, I saw that up close. Let me tell you something. When Tennessee came up here, I was kind of, one, I knew Pitt's defense was really good, but to go to overtime, that was a very tight game. And I think their offense is really, really good, but when you watch their run defense, Pitt ran for over 100 yards easy within the first half. I really questioned their defense, and that's kind of funny you bring that up.
They go 7-6 that year, and they should have won 10 games easy.
Oh right? Man, you look at that team, and it's kind of funny. It brings up that point where, and I want you to get what your thoughts are here for me, just because I have it at this point in this stage in the game.
Yeah,
I've got these teams where in the SEC I look at contenders. Yeah. Okay. Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee. Those are really, I think, the 3 teams that would really be the consistent.
I like LSU too. I do like LSU too.
So you look at those 4 teams, okay, and I look at those 4 teams, and I think, you know what? People really aren't talking about LSU enough. Just what are your thoughts on LSU and Brian Kelly? Because I'll tell you what, he did a hell of a job.
Brian Kelly is underrated, completely underrated. The guy is the winningest coach in Notre Dame history, man. That's insane. That's insane.
Yeah,
that we're talking about a place that after Coach Holtz left there, what did they do? What did they do? They had a couple of years here and there. Charlie Weiss had that year where they were close, right?
Yeah, they fell off the wagon now.
But then they fell apart, right? Because of the depth and the obviously the admission standards there make it hard for Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
But Brian Kelly went from Cincinnati to there, and man, they won. They played for a national championship against Alabama that year. They didn't show well.
They may have got slaughtered, but hey, they were in the national championship game.
They were in the national championship game. And then, yeah, and I mean, the fact that they got there, that was the thing. And then they get to the playoff after that, right? And they didn't, well, did they lost to Clemson that year? Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, they lost to Clemson that year. But then they basically playing in that conference. I mean, they'd played them a good game. They ended up beating Clemson the next year, whatever. I mean, they competed very well for not being able to recruit at the level that Clemson was going to be able to recruit, right? Now that he's at LSU, there is no shortage of people that want to go play at LSU. The state of Louisiana, and it is a hotbed for college football
Bayou,
players.
baby. The Bayou.
It is a hotbed for freaking athletes, these guys, man. And I mean, yeah, they're out there freaking fighting gators and doing all kinds. I mean, these kids are freaking studs, all of them. And whether they're from New Orleans or from out in the bayous, they can ball, man. And there's something to that. It's important to a lot of that state that you go play at LSU. So, generally speaking, you're not going to get those kids out of there. Alabama's got a few of them because Saban used to coach there. But aside from that, you don't see it much. I thought he made some missteps with his stupid accent thing that he did.
Oh, and my family.
Yeah. So dumb, right?
Oh, you're from Boston, brother.
So
Come on,
stupid, bro. Stop it. Yeah, just stop, man. Everybody knows you're not from there.
Irishman that's a Boston.
Yeah, you're from Boston and you're Irish, bro. You are not Creole.
The salesman came out that night, and he didn't realize how bad.
Hilarious, by the way. Hilarious, right? What a knucklehead. But that being said, and I think that once they got over when they lost to Florida State, and he handled it pretty well. Because while it seemed like the media, the kids even, some of them wanted him to leave that night. And he didn't care. He didn't care. This is the one thing about Brian Kelly that a lot of people hate the guy.
Yeah. A lot of guys hate him.
He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't. He doesn't care if you like him. Because you know what? He's going to go and do what he does anyway. And by the end of the next couple of weeks, he had that team believing in him and what they were doing and their quarterback, and they've got him back. And by the end of the year, then when you go and you beat Alabama, I don't care if it was by a point or 1,000 points, you still beat them.
Win to win.
Yeah. And so that helps your recruiting. They've recruited very well, right? They've been bringing in guys that he wasn't getting before at Notre Dame. And it's not that he didn't get good talent at Notre Dame. He obviously did. It's just that depth of talent that you weren't going to be able to get, because you got to be able to get some of those dogs that their grades ain't always the most important thing, right? You got to be able to do it. And we talked about that a lot about Oklahoma, that as much as we love the whole the way that Coach Venables is recruiting, the soul mission stuff, you got to have a few criminals on the team too. You know what I mean? You just kind of have
exactly. And it brings me to my point where, and I want to see if you agree with me, because I've actually had this conversation with numerous amounts of people.
Yeah.
Here's why LSU is the best job in the country. Here's why. People talk about Ohio State, Michigan, or Alabama, Georgia. Here's why. I'm going to give you 4 names: Nick Saban, Les Miles, Ed Orgeron, and pretty soon Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly hasn't won a national championship at LSU yet, but how many teams can say they've had 3 different head coaches within their tenure that won a national title? That place, their facilities are off the map. Okay, I have a friend that works down there. Their facilities are off the map. And I have a friend that works at Georgia, and it's elite there. Trust me.
Man. Oh, yeah.
Let me tell you something. LSU has everything to be a national power year in and year out.
They were dumping money into it before they won.
Yeah. I mean, you look at that school, but it's the talent-rich area. When you look at those kids, they want to go play for LSU. If you're losing, they're still going to consider LSU. When you're winning, they're going to LSU. That's the difference. They're going to consider it if they're not playing well. But if they're winning,
look at when they won their last one. Look at all those kids that came back. You had Beckham's out there throwing out $100 bills to guys and shit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't even care. That's their own little thing. They do whatever the hell they want down there. It's their own little crew, and they remain Tigers for life. And a lot of places are like that. Oklahoma's like that. I'm sure it's like that at Pitt to some extent. Obviously watching Coach I showed that he's got a bunch of those guys that played for Georgia on his show a lot, on that Respect the Hedges show. Great show, by the way.
Yes, great show.
Great show, man. Yeah. But these places like that, Alabama's like that, Florida's like that. There's a lot of these places. Florida State is definitely like that. I mean, yeah, there's something about that state. If they get you to go there, you are a Tiger for life. Shaq still goes back there, and they sucked.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But he goes down there and he takes care of those. I mean, look at what happened when the whole thing happened in the women's national championship game, and they were coming down hard on that girl for doing the whole Cena thing and all that.
Yeah.
And
they backed her up.
Shaq freaking backed her up. Ryan Clark backed her up big time.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody who was anybody that had to do with LSU was like, come at her. Go ahead.
Jamarcus Russell came out. Jamarcus Russell came out and said something. He's been in limbo ever since he left the Oakland Raiders.
I never heard anything from the dude since he left the Raiders. I didn't even know he still existed.
Let me tell you something. If you get a chance, watch the Pivot podcast with Ryan Clark and them guys. He's on there. Does a great job talking about it, laying low.
I love that show, by the way. Yeah.
Oh, phenomenal. Mm-hmm. When he came out and said something, I'm like, damn, this LSU fan base and alumni system is second to none. It's across the board. Man,
they love each other. And that's the whole thing, is that there's a lot of money behind it, and there is, hey man, and I can tell you from, and you're the same way. I can see it the same way with you with Pitt. You just love your school, but you don't see that everywhere to where it's that much. I mean, you'll see people turn on each other and things like that. I've seen some things at different schools, but Texas is even kind of like that, where they really love it. I mean, if you're a Texas alum, man, you are always in the loop. They call it the system or something like that, but once you've got, you're already in. It's kind of like Illuminati stuff or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just you're always a Texas guy. So I mean, I get it, and so screw those guys. But I mean, whatever. I had to do that here.
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming eventually.
Yeah, you knew it was coming.
Which leads me to my next point. Okay, so we know the 3 or 4 schools that will definitely compete. Okay, between Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and LSU.
And I'm leaning more towards Georgia, LSU, Tennessee. I think Alabama's struggling with their quarterback right now. I wouldn't count them out because of, they just pulled in a ridiculous. Nick Saban.
I don't know
but
how they
the
do
recruiting class is unbelievable. I think that they could do it in a different way, and they lost by 2 points. Their 2 games that they lost last year were by 2 points total. So I hate to, but I am leaning towards LSU and Georgia. That would be my 2 leaners.
But here's what I want to know: who? I really want to hear your thoughts on this, because it may be the same one as me, but.
Yeah.
Who is your dark horse in the SEC? What's the one school that you think could pop up out of nowhere? And I've got a school in mind, but I want to hear what yours first is.
I kind of keep going back and forth on this. And
I can't wait to hear this, because I have one. I think it's the
same belief. One. The belief is that there's no way that this works itself out. But if Jimbo Fisher allows Bobby Petrino to do his thing, they could win it all. They've got enough talent there to do it.
And it's funny because that's the school I was fighting with was Texas A&M, because they have the talent down there.
Do I trust them to do that? No.
Nobody does.
But if for some reason, I don't think that Jimbo will allow it, because it will take the shine off of him, and there's no way he allows that. But if he does, watch out, because they have ridiculous amounts of talent there.
And it's funny, I thought about them because, one, obviously just because of the talent. Their roster is incredible.
Their quarterback, he looked good that they finally, when they let him play last year, the young kid, he looks like the real deal. And now he's going to be playing for Bobby.
And and I think Bobby Petrino, whatever he's done in the past, I think he's still a hell of a coach. Exactly. The other team that I really have on there, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, and then Coach I probably wouldn't like this, but I know the stat guy would. I'm going with South Carolina, and here's why.
Yeah.
Beamer ball has made its way back in terms of the culture. I saw him on the Adam Brenneman show, the next one up, and I listened to it. And the culture that he has there, he clearly knows what he's looking for. That's his dream job. He's talked about it for how long. He didn't take the Virginia Tech job because
Surprises
he said, look,
me that that's his dream job, but
I know, wild, right? South Carolina. I guess he loves it, right? He loves it there, apparently. But the way he set up social media and the way that he's recruited and the way that they practice, you look at the school, especially down the stretch, look, Clemson has dominated that series in terms of, especially the past 10 years. Clemson has just run that thing. So I think in the past 10 years, if I had to bet, probably South Carolina has won once, maybe twice.
Yeah, I think maybe. Yeah, I think you're right.
Maybe twice, because I think last year obviously was South Carolina coming back to win that game, which was something. But we'll see if Clemson ends up, reviving its offense with Garrett Riley. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But I think South Carolina, when you look at this team, they've got a lot of talent on this team. Now,
but they lost a lot of talent too to the portal, didn't they?
I think they lost at least like 5 or 6 guys.
Two really good tight ends. I mean, the one guy went down to Florida State, which I was surprised at that. That dude was a stud.
Yes. And I think, but the one question that, you brought up earlier is, what Spencer Rattler are we going to get? And I think that kind of says a lot. When you look at the term.
He's got an NFL talent arm, though. The one thing I want to say about Spencer is if he ever gets it right up here, whoa. Because I don't know of many guys that I've seen, particularly at the college level, but even in the league, there's not a lot of guys that can throw the ball like Spencer. They just can't. He's got that kind of arm talent. He'll throw you open. There's some things that he can do. Now, but I think he's been so coddled and he's such a little that I just don't see it, man. I just don't see it.
It's going to come down to, can he be consistent? And I think that's a lot of the questions that people have about the guy.
When things go bad, what do you do? You know what I mean? And when I saw them play, when they kind of got behind at Arkansas, they got smoked. Same with Georgia, right?
Yep.
Once it got bad, it got really bad.
He breaks down. And the guy is just nowhere to be seen after that.
Right.
Can he make that next step in his development to where he says, you know what? This is the next stage. I want to go to the National Football League. And guess what? They're watching every moment of what I do. You had some big victories last year, but you also had some dumb losses last year too.
Yeah, you did.
Can we get an even Steven guy? Can we get a guy that's somewhat consistent?
Didn't they lose to Kentucky and stuff too, or some crap like that? I mean, it's so weird. You can go out there and do that to Tennessee and do that to Clemson and get beat by Kentucky, get beat by Arkansas. It's just weird. But hey man, and I'm with you. I think that would, and I like Shane. I think that he's a good coach. I love the way he pokes the bear too. I mean, I love that about college coaches. When they talk shit, I'm good with that. Bring it on. It's fun. It makes it fun, particularly in the SEC. I think if they're not talking trash, then you're no fun at all. You know what I mean? So I love that.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think that they're a good dark horse pick. But yeah, it would be A&M. It would be A&M, and it's just. But again, do I expect that? No.
And I'm with you on that. I really think the top 4 in the SEC is going to be Georgia, and I think you're in terms of you are really correct in terms of, let's put Georgia number 1, LSU number 2. You put Alabama at number 3 and then Tennessee at number 4. We'll see what they do,
because we got to see defense out of Tennessee before you can expect it, right?
It's amazing to me, man.
And as much as I like Josh, man, I like Josh, and I think, he's an Oklahoma guy, so you got to love him. But look, and I loved Coach Leach, by the way. I covered Texas Tech for a while when he was there, and I loved the guy. But the dude never. He had a few years that he was in contention, but they were never going to win it because they just didn't put enough into defense. They just never did, and you still haven't seen a spread. The air raid has still never won it. The whole thing.
Nope.
Right?
Nope.
Just haven't done it. So
leads me to our next segment, which will be a good one.
Cool.
Is the top ACC contenders. Obviously, being in the ACC myself, this is going to be a hell of a conference this year. I think it's going to be very competitive.
I'm excited about the ACC this year, man.
ACC, let me tell you something. Quarterback galore. It's just all over the place where you get to look at these quarterbacks. Cade Klubnik down at Clemson. We'll see what he does this year. But there's numerous quarterbacks, and we'll get into that. But with the ACC, if I had to pick really the contenders for the ACC, I'm going to go with 4. And I'm going to put Clemson number 1 just because of Clemson and Dabo Swinney. Until you top him off, I think he's always going to be number 1. Number 2, I'm going to have Florida State because of their year last year. Jordan Travis returning for Florida State. But for 3 and 4, I'm going to put Pitt at number 3. And then I'm going to put UNC at number 4 because of Drake May.
Yep.
Okay. And I can't wait to hear your top contenders possibly for the ACC. But when I look at the ACC, You look at those 4 teams. Cade Klubnik will be a young guy. We'll see what he does under Garrett Riley, the offensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator coming over from TCU to Clemson. But I think Florida State is one that's up there because Jordan Travis has that experience. At Pitt, Phil Jerkovic coming over from Boston College, being in the Frank Signetti system. It'll be something to watch this year. But also, too, UNC, man, Mac Brown, obviously, we'll see with Phil Longo going to Wisconsin what that means for UNC. But
that's a great point. Great point right there. Yeah, I was fixing to ask you about that. What you thought about that?
And when I look at UNC, I think they have a great team. I really do. But just the defense really just scares me. And I think Drake May, you can't really mess up that much of a talent. The guy's going to go in the first round this year, regardless, no matter what. I think it's hard to really mess that up. But really, those are really my top 4 teams when I look in terms of the ACC being able to battle for the top spot. One that's really cool this year, the ACC no longer has divisions anymore.
I like that part too, man. I like
the
that
Atlantic and the Coastal Division are gone. They now have 3 set matchups for the next 4 years. This will be really fun to watch. But I want to hear, what are your 2 or 3, possibly even 4 top contending teams in the ACC?
Yeah, I'm with you on it. I feel like Clemson is still head above everybody else.
And I agree.
Really do. And I think when you bring in a guy like Garrett Riley, and as much as I don't like his brother,
me and you both, brother. Hey, he hurt Pitt fans in a way too with tampering. So none of us.
And I brought that up. I was going to bring that up. Is that I understood when Coach Prime caught that Narduzzi flack, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a direct effect of what Lincoln Riley's been doing all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
And even when he was at Oklahoma, this guy is shady, man. Straight up.
I agree.
So, there's no 2 ways around it. And there is everybody knows now that he was recruiting. I mean, he had decided to take the USC job early on. And you can see it where he threw game after game. He tried to throw the Red River game. He waited until they were behind 28 before he put Caleb Williams in. It just wasn't enough.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
They tried to chuck that one too. He got exposed by Baylor. And then he let Okie Light do it too. I mean, he tried to, and Caleb almost won that one anyway. You know what I mean? And that would have screwed him up.
Yeah.
But when you start finding out that he was recruiting for USC on Oklahoma's dime.
Yeah.
Kids that didn't end up going to SC and that were being recruited by him, they didn't come to Oklahoma either, but it was being passed along. It was well known. I mean, this is a well-known real thing that happened. In the end, I get that part. So, but what I'll tell you is this: as much as I think he's a slimy dude, and he is a slimy dude, and I'm guessing that Garrett is, it's his brother, so he can't be a whole lot different. Now, what I will say is that I don't know that Dabo will allow such sliminess, right?
I don't think he will either because of the culture that he sets. I think Garrett Riley,
that's not how he rolls.
Good job at TCU. Yeah, but you're going to follow.
Even Venables and him have not messed with each other's kids, really. They've competed with obviously for Brown and
because Venables some of those other guys.
I mean,
that's why I like Venables. That's why I love Venables.
But he didn't pick any of the guys that he could have taken from that defense with him. He could have. He made an agreement. A lot of people were pissed about that around Norman, but that's the truth of it. Now, but here's the deal. He showed. I mean, look, as much as I like Max Duggan, he had a great season last year, and I put a lot of that on Garrett. I put a lot of it on Sonny as well, because they're all from that same system, right? Mm-hmm. There's a reason why Sonny brought him in. But I think Garrett is great. I think he's doing a great job. And Cade, there was times he looked okay at times whenever they'd stick him in last year. I feel like DJU got kind of a bad rap out there too. I just don't think they had it going on offense, and they didn't do the things that DJU was good at.
Yeah.
And that's what I think that's when you're a really good offensive coordinator. When you take a quarterback that he may not fit you perfectly or what you want to do, but you're able to be multiple enough to change things up a little bit and do what he's good at. It'll win you games. It'll win you games. I think DJU is going to do great out at Oregon State, but I know this about Cade Klubnik. The guy's a stud. straight up stud. He beat the brakes off of freaking, I don't know about beat the brakes, but he beat up on Quinn Ewers in the state championship his senior year out there, right? Look, the guy is really, really good. Really good. I think that in you're going to get some things that they're going to make it easy, because the one thing I'll tell you about Lincoln Riley's offense, and it's the same thing that they do, and it's the Leach offense, is that it's 2 words, and essentially what it is, it's matchup driven. So you're going to match up your guys, and me and Coach I kind of went back and forth about this last week on my show, because he's saying that Clemson's receivers are trash.
I don't agree with that. Yeah,
I think they're going to put him in I think that Garrett is going to put those guys in a better position to win matchups than you ever saw. And I doubt that they were that bad, or else they wouldn't be at Clemson. So, I mean, maybe they haven't shown it yet. But, I mean, we ended up agreeing to disagree, because I got what he was saying, and I think he got what I was saying too.
Yeah.
But he was saying that separation-wise, they didn't really need a ton of separation in the Oklahoma offense. And if you noticed it last year in the USC offense, it's the same way. And even when you look, Quentin Johnson he was huge, but he didn't get no separation anywhere.
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, he's a big guy, but I didn't even think Quentin was definitely the best guy on that TCU team. So I feel like this offense he's gonna make things easy. You make a read, you're gonna see the matchup before you snap the football. And if you do the right things, which I think he's going to make it easy for him to do, I think that Cade's going to make that offense considerably better. And they were already good. Their defense is still kind of humming along with the guys that they have left over there. Coach Venable's son's still there. They've got, they've still got a really good defensive coordinator. I like Clemson. I really also like Florida State. I think that Mike Norvell has definitely turned the corner there. I mean, you kind of wondered if he didn't get it somewhere where they were last year, he may not have been around. But I think that he's got it moving. And Jordan Travis is a good player, man. I think if he stays healthy, that's going to be a fun little matchup there. But the more I would look at Pitt, the more I like them. They just seem to be. And yeah, they're gonna hit you, man. They're gonna bring their game, and Pat's gonna have a good game plan. Coach really has a lot of respect for Coach Narduzzi, and he talks about him a lot. And he was like, "Man, that guy's he's gonna be a pain in their ass, just like he was the year that they won the ACC." Look, I think that they're gonna stay that way. One of my dark horse teams, though, in NC State, they just continue to get better, dude. NC State just gets better all the freaking time, and I don't get it.
And I don't get it. It's funny. That's where me and you are completely 100% on point.
Yeah.
For some reason, they can never put it together. There's always a loss, whether it's to UNC or to somebody else that just totally plateaus them.
But they freaking play really good against everybody,
And personally, Dave Doran, the guy, the head coach of obviously we're talking about Dave Doran, the head coach of the NC State Wolfpack. I think he's done a good job, not a great job, because he hasn't got to that plethora yet. He hasn't got to the AC championship game yet. But I'll tell you what, to the West Virginia fans will be watching this, don't be shocked if you hear here in the next year or so, Tony Gibson interviews again for that West Virginia head coaching job, because the defensive coordinator for the Wolfpack is Tony Gibson, who's done a hell of a job. Okay, obviously he was with the Rich Rod system when they went to 2007, where they almost went to the national championship game until they beat them 13-9.
Hell out of Oklahoma that year.
I'll tell you what, I think when you look at NC State in terms of a dark horse for this conference, they're in there every year, because if they don't have that one loss, they're potentially a team that goes to the ACC championship game. So. And again, I have them in there, and obviously I had UNC in there as potentially a team that could contend.
Carolina was my other. I mean, I was with you on the 4. I'm with you there. But I was saying dark horse wise, I mean, I think Drake May is going to do things, and I think that they're not going to get away from what Phil Longo was doing.
Yeah, I don't think so.
See that.
You got to figure out what is Mac Brown going to do? Is he going to put it together finally? And it's just, obviously Tony Grimes, the defensive back from UNC, he left there. There was also 6 other transfers on that defense. They look to be very young this year again. It's just, you wonder, Gene Chisnick, the defensive coordinator at North Carolina right now. You look at that from a perspective, can he put it together? And I think, it was funny listening to the Joe Klatt show the other day. He talked about it, just their defense, they just can't figure it out. And if he had to put a number on it right now with the guys they have, it doesn't look good. NC State has a good defense. Now, and here's what people don't realize too. Devin Leary left UNC, at North Carolina State, but guess what? They got Brennan Armstrong and his offensive coordinator from Virginia. So that kind of puts me in that way too, is potentially they could compete this year.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, it's just, there's something that they just continue to do. It seems like for the last 10 years or so, and Wake Forest is another one of these teams that just, for whatever reason, they just play good football every week. Now they lost their quarterback, obviously, to Notre Dame. I think that probably hurt them. We talked about that on my show whenever we were talking about. I think that what you said was right. When you lose that quarterback, and I think he was a good one, that's probably going to hurt Wake a little bit. But Wake's another one of those teams. The ACC is kind of sneaky good, man. Yeah. It's just sneaky good. And I know nobody's giving them a lot of credit right now or anything like that. And some of those teams that haven't really stepped up just yet need to kind of step up to get that credit.
I agree.
That being said, do I think the two blue bloods of the conference, if you want to call them blue bloods, Florida State, Clemson, they should win the thing. But I like Pitt a lot, and again, Carolina, I think with Drake May, that's the one thing about college football, and you know this as well as anybody. A real quarterback could change things, right?
Quarterback is everything.
It really is, and I mean, he'll keep you in a lot of games that you wouldn't be in otherwise. Without Drake May, what would they be without all these other guys that have left the program, right?
Exactly.
So it's to me, I think that when you've got a guy like that, this is a guy that if anybody else is going to win the Heisman, it's probably going to be him. I would say that he's the next guy in line for the Heisman if it's not Caleb Williams, and you haven't seen anybody since Archie back in the 70s do that at Ohio State. So, I mean, I'm doubting that. But I think that Caleb Williams is a generational talent too, and I think that he could do it. I do feel like I don't think that they win more than 8 games this year, though. I just think that the schedule sets up hard for USC this year, and they're not going to play any better defense. I don't care what anybody says. They're just not. It's just the way it is. And I think they're going to run into some situations that it's I wouldn't be surprised to see Colorado beat them, but I really feel like Washington and Oregon will beat them. I just do. Yeah.
So, it's funny, just we talked about that, and just the terms of the quarterbacks, it's the biggest position on the field.
Sure it is.
And when you look at the ACC, you look at a guy like Drake May, who I think is number 1, the best quarterback from UNC. But then you also have a guy like Jordan Travis at Florida State, then Kate Klubnik at Clemson, then Brennan Armstrong.
Those two guys are like with Drake. I mean, Drake can spin it. I mean, he's a good player. But with Jordan, you're going to get a lot of different things out of him, and he could throw it too.
Yeah.
What a game he had against LSU in that first game of the year last year. What a game.
That was a shocking win, man. I was like, man, he played his guts out. And when that game really proved to me that I thought he could actually have a good year, because obviously
I like Jordan.
When we were down there, Pitt was down there before, and when Pitt beat Florida State. But I can tell you this, Jordan Travis, you saw the light. You saw some type of athletic ability. He had the strength, especially the arm strength. But last year, that guy put it together. And I think if he does it again, we're looking at a Florida State team that could be in the ACC championship game.
No doubt. And I mean, they're a dark horse. A lot of people have them as a dark horse playoff team. You know what I mean? And people are even talking national championship. I don't think that that's possible, but it could be. But that a lot of things would have to happen, and I just didn't see that their defense was that good. And I don't think that they kept their defense together as much as you probably want them to. I think that it's Clemson's to lose, but you never know with the new quarterback. I mean, he's still young. I do feel like he's going to do pretty well with Garrett, though. I just do. To me, it's Clemson's to lose, but man, I really do like that league. I don't think that you have a lot of weeks where you're just going to go in there and blow anybody out. I think you got a lot of good games, and so you never know. So,
we'll see. And again, to all the fans, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe now. Like the content. Button. Of course, please follow Jason on his account. He's got a hell of a show. Again, thankful for he's coming on at this point. We have one more topic left to go. It's incredible. We get to talk about the quarterbacks: Clemson, Kate Klubnik, Jordan Travis at Florida State, Drake May at UNC, Phil Jurkovec at Pitt, Brennan Armstrong at
Tell me real quick before we move on. Tell me about Phil Jurkovec, though, because I haven't seen much of him. He was at BC, right?
Yeah, so he was at Boston College. He had a really big year. Obviously, came from Notre Dame to Boston College.
Right.
Didn't work out at Notre Dame. Went to Boston College. Had a hell of a 2020 year with current and Pitt offensive coordinator Frank Cignetti that's there right now. If in my opinion, if Phil can get back to what he was in 2020, where everyone was considering him that 6'5", 225 pound frame,
right? He's got a big old arm too, right?
Yeah. And so he was getting that first round look, but then these last 2 years, the offensive line was horrible. He got injured. He's in and out. It's not going to help your draft stock. So obviously he fell out. We'll see if he's able to bounce back this year. Personally, he's got
that body size kind of like Kenny, though, right? I mean, he just kind of looks like he could be that dude, right?
That's why I'm really interested, and I think that we'll see what type of leadership he has. I think with Kenny had that athletic ability. That's the biggest thing
with Kenny. Yeah, he was a leader.
Yeah, Kenny was that 6'2", 6'3" guy. Had athletic ability, underrated. Obviously, was in the Heisman finalists. But I want to see what type of leadership Phil Jurkovec has, because here's the thing: Pitt won 9 games last year with with Keaton Slovis, a guy that just clearly did not work out. I mean, he's obviously at BYU now. Well, I wish him well. He was a good young man when he was here, but just could not fit in the pro style system. He couldn't read defenses very much in terms of decision making. That was very questionable. Held on the ball too long.
Still won 9 games. Oh yeah, and that's what I'm worried about with our quarterback, is that he holds on the ball sometimes. He's like,
it's a major thing. So and you put that all together. Pitt still won 9 games, beats number 18 UCLA, in the bowl game. We'll see what they can do.
I like Pat, man. I think he's a hell of a coach, man. I think he
does. I tell you what, man. From watching him, he's a guy that does more with less. And I think that now, we talked about a recruiting class, Pitt's number 9 and rivals right now in recruiting class. That will drop because there'll be more teams that add. But I think when we look at it right now, it'll be a top 20 class. But he's just done a good job, man. He can coach. He knows what he wants, the system he wants. He's a pro-style guy. I mean, it's what he wants. And I think
it's a proud program, though, there, too, and they kind of have to show out because the Steelers are right there with them in the same building and all that stuff. So I think it's a good situation for them over there. I like it.
It's good living up to the standard, in which, Mike Tomlin would say the standard is the standard, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers way. Obviously, it's very cool to see Pitt, obviously, winning the ACC championship game a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was cool, man.
But just Pat Narduzzi, tough guy, man. It's just he looks for the certain guys.
That's why Coach loves him. He's like, man, I like Narduzzi. He don't talk no bullshit. He's just real.
But that's a Brent Venables, and I think that's why he's going to do so well at Oklahoma, because they have a lot of the same mindsets. They're strong defensively. They're in your face. They'll play quarters defense. Pat plays quarters defense the entire time. You'll see Brent Venables play that from time to time because he's just so mixed. He does a great job of finding matchups. Give him time. I know the defense wasn't great last year.
Deshaun McCullough is going to be great.
Yeah.
I'm excited about him, dude.
Also, a guy that was up here previously that will probably commit to Oklahoma, from what I've been told, is Nigel Smith, the defensive end, a guy that's incredible. I can tell you this.
Nigel?
Yes,
that's my guy. I was talking about him last night, man. He's my favorite. He's my favorite recruit, period, in the country. My favorite
Freak of nature.
Well, I did a short on him today. Check it out. Look at him play basketball. Forget football. Watch the kid play basketball. He's explosive, period.
The reason why I like basketball is
the reason. This is the reason why I think he's the best. Look, David Stone is an Oklahoma kid. He is a Sooner. He needs to become a Sooner. I am not. That's the most important recruit for everybody at Oklahoma. But Nigel, to me, and don't get me wrong, Williams Nwaneri and Nwaneri is unbelievable too, right? And I think that they're both going to end up there. But the guy they need to get is Nigel, man. I've been saying it. He's my favorite recruit in the country. He really is. And so I'm really hoping that he ends up at OU. He's been at OU a lot this year, and they love him there. And I think, but he's also high character and hard worker. I think he's perfect for him. I'm glad to hear.
You'll love him. Trust me, you'll love
You're
him
right.
a lot. Aaron Donald loved him. He came up here and worked with Aaron Donald in the facility up here, and had Pitt in the running for a little bit. But then obviously he's looking at some good programs in terms of
Penn
Oklahoma.
State and
Obviously, he's got
OSU seem to be really high on him too, and Ohio State is really close. It seems like they may be getting him, and I worry about that because you've got Larry Johnson there, who's the godfather when it comes to D-line guys. So it's
But from what I'm told, is that he's got a really good relationship with Brent Venables. Just saying, that's
he
what I was
does,
told.
and Todd, and him and Todd they're tight. Yeah, him and Todd Bates. So I'm excited about that. That's good. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, man. That makes me happy. Yeah,
you'll love it. So now to our last topic of the night, guys. And again, thank you for tuning in tonight. The last topic, the contenders of the Big 12. And before I give my contenders, Coach, for instance, I talked to Coach I about this earlier today. It was kind of funny. We were having a conversation back and forth. But Jason, I want to get your top 3 or 4 contenders for the Big 12 the last year that Oklahoma and Texas will be in the conference. A very competitive conference.
I'll make it easy, yeah. I'll make it easy
ahead
for you. It should be Texas and it should be Oklahoma playing for the championship last season. You got to get there. Will it be? Maybe not. A year ago, there was 3 total offensive holding calls against Oklahoma and Texas, or against called on teams that played OU and Texas in the conference. 3, 1 against OU, 2 against Texas. 3. That's unheard of, unbelievable. I can tell you that, and I've said this earlier today.
Let the kids play, baby.
Let them play, number one, and then I really feel like there's I hate to say it, but I could see Xavier Worthy running down the sideline and they trip his ass and it would have got him into the it would have got him into the championship game. I just don't know that the Big 12 is going to allow it. And I hate to say that because I have nothing but respect for this commissioner and a lot of the teams around that. I mean, I covered the Big 12 for a long time, and I'm a Big 12 guy myself. I don't have a problem with that. I think that there's been so much bad blood, and maybe it's over with because it's over, right? Now that we know that Oklahoma and Texas are leaving, maybe it's okay. I don't know. I just don't know. But the other part that I would tell you is, and it may have nothing to do with the officiating, it could have everything to do with the fact that Sark does not make adjustments at all.
Nope.
So
he doesn't.
Until he proves that he's never won 10 games, he's only won 9 once. So they definitely have the best roster in the conference, without a doubt. Oklahoma's a little behind, but not much. But I would tell you I believe in Coach V. I do. I believe in Coach V a lot. I believe in Jeff Lebby, and I believe in Todd Bates in their recruiting. I do. I do also believe that there's a learning curve. No matter how long you've been a coordinator, there's a learning curve to being a head coach. And it's time for Coach V to take the next level, the next step there. Will he this season? Well, we're going to see. The defense was so bad a year ago. I don't know that it was so much about that, is that it was just not good. They had to turn over almost the whole thing.
Yeah.
They've brought in a lot of guys through the portal. If you end up with the guys like, David Stone, Williams, Waneri, Nigel, and you add those to the guys they brought in, Makari Vickers, Peyton Bowen, hey, listen, Dasan McCullough is an unbelievable. He was a freshman All-American in Indiana a year ago. This guy's a stud. They should be a lot better. If they're top 50 on defense and their offense is anywhere like it was last year, they should. Their bottom is 9. They can't.
I agree.
Really, because of and a lot of it has to do with the crappy schedule that they got. It's just bad. They got a break. They don't have to play K-State. That's been their kryptonite for. They've lost 3 or 4 to K-State. That's been they don't have to play them unless they get them in the championship game. They don't play Tech, although I believe that kick was good. There wasn't
Joe McGuire's a good coach. He's a good coach.
Joey's a very good coach, and
Texas
he is
guy.
I like Joey a lot. The bottom line is they had 50 points. They put up 50. You got to win that game, and I think it looked to me, that kick looked good to me. Now, I wasn't in the stadium, but I know they didn't have a camera angle underneath that goalpost for whatever reason,
which is stupid.
Right?
I don't know why they didn't have it underneath that. They always do.
Again, you're leaving yourself open for questions and criticism. It looked like it was good to me. Now, am I going to say for sure that it was? No, but it was questionable. They don't play them either, and they don't play Baylor, and they lost to them at the last second too. They've lost 2 years in a row to Dave Aranda's Baylor Bears. That's 3 losses that they had. I think West Virginia is going to be trash. I know Cruz is not going to want to hear that.
I know,
but
Cruz is my
they're
guy
trash.
too.
Yeah. So they and you know they shouldn't have lost to them last year, but they did. They're going to win that game. I think that their trip up games, I can see 4 losses. I can see 4 teams that might trip them up. I can't see all 4 of them doing it, right?
I know.
You know what I mean? Like Kansas, I think with Jalen Daniels, I think he's the best quarterback in the league. I think that they're going to give people fits. They can't stop anybody. But I'm going to tell you, Lance Leipold is unbelievable as a coach. This guy has flipped it around at Kansas like that, right? Same thing with Kansas has it going on with their head coaches right now, K-State, and because you got Kleiman,
Chris Kleiman, and then,
we talked about that on my show, and you broke that down great. I think they're both really good. So K-State, I think that's the other school. If I'm picking anybody to get into the championship game aside from OU and Texas, it would be K-State. I think TCU has a hangover this year. They had a lot of super seniors. They're all gone. They're also replacing Garrett with Kendall Briles, which I like Kendall a lot, but it's not the same offense. It's not the same offense. I don't know. I don't care what anybody tells you. It's not the same thing. It's not really close. It looks a lot like it, but the calls are completely different. The routes are different. The timing is different. It's a lot of RPO stuff where you didn't get a lot of that out of the Riley offense. You won't see the same thing. I think that could be an issue there. Plus, they're just not as heavy with super senior kind of guys. I think they recruited well. I think they're still recruiting well, and they're probably going to be pretty good because Sonny's a good coach.
Yeah.
But I see them having a bit of a hangover. I could see them losing to Coach Prime in game 1. I really could. I could see that happening because I think that Shador's better than a lot of people do. You know what I mean? I just do. Now, maybe they're a dark horse, but to be honest with you, I wonder if they allow Sark to go into the SEC as the head coach if he doesn't win 10 and get to that championship game.
And that kind of leads me to the contenders, and it kind of what you're saying there leads me to that point. And number one, I'm going to put the number one contender. I think is going to be Texas because here's the thing.
Yeah, they should be.
Texas has the roster, but here's the thing: if he doesn't win at least 10 games this year, I don't think he's there. I think they fire him. I think if he doesn't even win,
because I think that you could get Urban. He's available, and he would go to Texas.
They could do better than Urban. Just too much. There's too much around Urban. I just think that
it's just like Texas to do it, though.
Yeah, it's some greaseball stuff. Yeah, for sure. I mean, they would definitely do it with the oil money. But I got Texas number 1, Oklahoma number 2 because I like Venables a lot, and I don't like the discredit that he gets after just 1 year as the coach from the roster.
Yeah, like that was his problem that got left. That was a mess it was a mess from year 1 that Lincoln took over. There's a video that I'm gonna send to you for you to watch part of it about they needed a break. It never broke completely until it did, and when it did, it needed to because if without it, they were never going to fix it. And so that's always the way I felt about that. I think Coach V gets a lot of the bad because he hasn't been a head coach, and there's always a question. It's easy to talk about that shit in the media, man. You know what I mean?
It's so easy to talk about it, and I think. After watching that guy, I understand he wasn't a head coach at Clemson. He was a defensive coordinator, but how he led that defense, in my opinion, in college football, I don't even care in the terms of the transfer portal. Every coach should be given 3 to 4 years to develop their culture. Okay. I think Brent Venables is a hell of a coach.
He's definitely doing it his way too. He is. I'm just going to tell you, JJ, he is definitely doing it his way. He's not going to waver on that shit.
And guess what?
I'm glad.
Who was at the facility after all this shit broke loose between Lincoln Riley and Oklahoma? Who was at the facility during recruiting weekend? Former head coach, you may know his name.
Yeah, Bob Stoops. He's always
Bob Stoops was there. There's a reason why this guy was picked. He's a tremendous asset to this university. He understands the alumni base. He understands the former players. He understands the current players. I think that the future for Oklahoma is in great hands with this guy. If they just
they
let
give him
the
time.
guy do his job. Yeah, just let him do his job. They'll be perfectly fine.
You know how fan bases are, though, how quick the trigger could be for some of these guys. And
exactly.
The truth is, I think that you got to give him 4 years. I think that the good news is that he was smart enough. He's got Jimmy Sexton as his agent, just like these other big time coaches, right? So he made it to where the buyout is huge if they fire him before 4 years.
Yep.
So that's the good news. The other thing is like even at Clemson, the first year and a half, that defense struggled. You know, it's like in the first time he was at Oklahoma, same thing. That first year they struggled. The second year they were good enough. They kind of caught lightning in a bottle to win the national title, but they got better as time went on, right? They
exactly.
Just and it's always that third year that they really look good on defense, right?
Because you finally, for instance, just simple things, how to practice, how he wants practice to be run. Yes. Okay, it's starting from ground zero from what Lincoln did.
It's a difficult defense, though. In comparison to the speed D that Alex Grinch ran, it's not the same. Close.
Yeah.
Not even. Yeah.
And guess what? Let's be honest, too. Alex Grinch, he needed a little bit of help up at Ohio State, too. And
they were happy to get him the hell out of there. They were happy to get him the hell out of there.
So at the end of the day,
it's a terrible move by Lincoln. Terrible move. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, give this guy time, and I think that actually they compete in the SEC for national titles and the SEC championship games. Now, with the college football playoff going to 12 teams, don't be surprised you see Oklahoma in the college football playoff a lot sooner than what people think. My two teams that I look at in terms of that can compete with those two teams, Oklahoma and Texas.
Right.
I'm going to be honest with you. I've got Kansas State and Texas Tech. And here's why.
I like Tech too.
We talked about it. Coach McGuire, he's a mainstay, former head coach, high school head coach in Texas, a stud of a coach.
They got a quarterback.
Same thing with Chris. Yes. And Chris Kleiman. You can't defeat coaching. You cannot defeat it. If they just give them just half decent players, they're going to be competitive with it. A proven point with Kansas State this year. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're right on. I think that's who I have. Tech, I want to see them do it, because they just haven't. But K-State, I got nothing but respect for them. They've got to, and as much as everybody's wanted to get rid of this quarterback at K-State.
I know.
Think about this for a second.
It's honestly aggravating.
One of the greatest performances I've ever seen in the Big 12 championship game was last year, TCU Max Duggan. And he lost.
Yeah. And here's the thing, too, to the TCU fans. People could be saying, well, we were just in a national championship. I understand that. I just think that the quarterback change is huge.
TCU, I just think they have a hangover, man. I really do. I just do. I think it's hard when you get 67 hung on you, and it's just not that's tough, man. It's tough.
And don't get me wrong, TCU fans, we definitely know that the amount of talent that they've added through the transfer portal, they've added a couple guys from Alabama. We certainly see that. I just think that they need to figure out who the next step at quarterback is. I think quarterback is just so important in college football. Sure. I know I love Sonny Dykes. He's going to have success there for the long term, but I just want to see what it looks like. Because obviously, too, I want to mention this too. TCU almost lost to West Virginia last year. I mean, that was a very close game down to the wire. And
they got on a run that they got some lucky breaks. First and foremost, they almost lost to Tech. They hurt their quarterback. They hurt Oklahoma's quarterback. Now they were ahead a little bit in that game already.
Yep. Kansas
but they hurt DG. Then they turn around and they hurt Oklahoma State. Spencer got hurt the next week.
Yeah.
Right? They hurt pretty much every quarterback.
Yeah.
The only one that didn't get hurt was Quinn, and he had been hurt already. But it
didn't Jaden Daniels get hurt eventually?
Yes. I'm telling you,
how lucky can that be?
I think there might be 2 or 3 teams that didn't get hurt against it. They were dirty on defense, man. They were dirty.
And their defense was horrendous too. Their defense was horrendous.
It was crazy, right? But they were dirty enough that like the way that they hit Dylan. Yeah. It was he was sliding and the guy freaking slammed his head into the turf like that. It was jacked up. And and of course that sent Oklahoma the other way, but they look, man. K-State had a 17-point lead on them, and so did Oklahoma State the week before that. They came back and won both of those games. There was both times on that. Now the K-State game, that had to do with Adrian Martinez getting a little banged up in that. And then Will Howard, actually, they probably left Adrian in a little long, and Will Howard, kind of got them to where they were, but it was weird kind of deal that they came back on that. Duggan and I'm going to say this, Max Duggan played his heart out. He really did. But they caught some breaks last year that normally you would, and then you kind of wondered what was going to happen when they lost to K-State in the championship game. It was like, yep, because even the Texas game, I thought TCU was probably their best game, right? It really was.
Yeah.
They dominated defensively. They didn't really let Texas do anything. It was in Austin, and they still did it. They seem to have UT's number for whatever reason, so that's been good for them. But yeah, I just think that they lost a little much. And even though I think their quarterback is going to be fine, I'm not sure what they got around them. I just think that it's going to be a tough one. And K-State, Will Howard, like I said, as great of a game as everybody was talking about Duggan, he almost won himself the Heisman in losing the game, right?
I know.
And Will beat him, and nobody gives Will any credit. It's weird. It's just weird.
It's honestly frustrating, and I'm not even a Kansas State fan, but
they beat the shit out of freaking Oklahoma State. They beat the crap out of them, and he lit it up, man. It wasn't Adrian in that game. It wasn't.
No, it was not.
I mean, yeah. So listen, I think that Will Howard, they ought to be happy that they got him because they know what they're doing. He knows what he's doing, and Kleiman loves him. I think it's the guy, man. I think it is, and I think that Okay, so I feel like it should be Oklahoma and Texas in the championship game. I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be OU and Kansas State. I think we're going to get out of here having to play them one more time.
And I'm actually going to be, I think it should be Texas and Oklahoma, but I'm going to go actually with you because I have it written down right here. Oklahoma versus Kansas State in the Big 12 title game.
I think that's what happens, man. And I also think that Texas Tech could be right in the mix for that because they have a hell of a quarterback themselves, and they got the young kid that they're freshmen. Oof. Hey, man, Joey's doing some things there that nobody's done before. They got a top 25 recruiting class that never happens at Texas Tech, man. Never. Yeah. So we're going to see, but it should be a fun last season in it. I'm excited for the SEC, but I am excited for one more season in the Big 12 as well.
One more season in the Big 12?
Beat the brakes off of Okie Light.
Well, I have to get them on the show with you guys just to talk about the rivalry. That'll be fun. Yeah. That'll be for another night. But let me tell you guys here that tonight, this was a hell of a show. Jason, fun, again, man. I cannot thank you enough. I've been wanting to get you on here. I've been so busy. It was incredible getting you on here. The knowledge that for instance, just your show in general which is incredible. So just for you to come on my show.
Your show's great too, by the way. I've enjoyed it, and I enjoy being on the show. It's a lot of fun. We're having a lot of blast with it, and I love having you on our show. So, yeah, we can do this anytime, man. I'll talk ball with you any day, JJ.
Brother, I'm a little guy compared to you, but let me tell you this. Please tell everybody, of course, everyone that, again, Jason Watkins at the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. But, Jason, again, please just tell everybody where they can find you, Twitter, YouTube, everything. It's an incredible show, guys. Please give him a follow, but please tell them where to get you at.
Yeah, come check us out. We're about to start doing things about 5 days a week as soon as we get this studio finished up, and we're excited to have JJ on as much as we possibly can. You guys that follow JJ, get him out there. Don't worry about my channel so much. Just get him out there. We want to get him over that 1,000 subs. We're going to share him around as much as we can. But yeah, check us out at CFB-pod on YouTube. HOFmedia.us is our website. You can find everything we have there. And then just on Twitter at BirdieManDub. I like to talk ball all day long, so just let us know and take a look at everything. You're going to get to see JJ out there a lot, so definitely help it. We've got to help him get over that 1,000 mark. So share everything that you see here. Share it with your friends. The people that love college football should love his show because he talks about things in another way. I mean, he's going to break it down the right way for you. And Tim Fitzgerald was completely, everybody that I've talked to, they're all very impressed with you. I'm very impressed with you. Great show, by the way. And thanks for having me on, man. It was great.
It's a privilege to hear that from you guys in general. It's flattering to say the least because I'm nowhere near in the terms of what you guys are.
Man. It's real. You're doing a great job.
That's why I love you guys. It's the truth, and that's why I can't thank you enough for coming on again. Yeah, Jason Watkins, the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. Again, you'll get the realest stuff here, guys. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. An hour and 45 minutes of great college football content. Again, thank you so much to the college football fans, to the Pitt fans, to the Oklahoma fans. Thank you guys for tuning in. It'll be great when we drop this here within the next couple hours. I'll be able to put some stuff together, put it out there. Again, as always and forever, let's go to college football. Always college football. Hail to Pitt. I'll see you guys soon.